All right, so thank you for coming to this panel. It's called Pursuing Your Passion. Of course, we have Vincent, Zhou here, and Rachel, Zhang. And then we're also going to have, I know this is the last panel, I'm sure everyone's very tired, so we're going to have a little more like relaxed loose session for the second half. So, yep, I hope you enjoy.
Please, after you.
Hello, testing. Okay. Hi everyone, my name is Rachel Zhang. I recently graduated from the University of Michigan, where I served as their 57th drum major, and I was the first woman of color to do so.
Hey everyone, my name is Vincent, Zhou. I'm a sophomore at Brown University studying economics. I'm also a Team USA figure skater.
Alright, thanks guys. I also now feel obligated to mention that I'm a college sophomore as well at UPenn, and then my name's Selena. Okay, so we're gonna get started with first talking about, like, I think what everyone wants to hear. And it's about how you guys managed to go so deeply, delve so deeply into the extracurricular that you both pursued. And like, how did you commit yourself, I guess, to this extracurricular? How did you know that this was the right extracurricular for you? And also, like, what sort of strategies did you have to use in order to balance, like, the time between academics and extracurriculars?
That's a lot of questions, Selena. Thank you.
I'm sorry. I just want to give you some to choose from.
Well, so I served as drum major with the marching band, which is musical. It was physical, artistic, and creative. So that really appealed to a lot of my interests right from the get-go. And from 8th grade in middle school through senior year of college, that is where I found my community as well. So I met all of my best friends. I met a lot of my mentors on the instructional staff, and I met like my current girlfriend, a lot of my future roommates as well. So choosing marching band and choosing to devote a lot of that natural time, it was a very easy decision for me. It just felt easy. It was worth the time for me.
Well, so for me, I started skating at 5.5 for a friend's birthday party. But skating is a sport that requires a huge time commitment and other commitments right from the start. And I'm a perfectionist and I'm a completist. Once I get into something, I want to go. Once I get into something, I want to go all the way. So, needless to say, I was hooked with skating right from the start. But as I developed in my skating journey, I quickly realized there's not enough time for me to do everything, to follow a traditional school life and pursue skating at a really high level. So there were a lot of sacrifices that had to be made, and I had to learn a lot of important skills, time management and compartmentalization. But the most important thing, so I get asked this question all the time, is how do you balance school and skating? It's probably the one question that I get asked the most. And the way I answer is that there is no secret ingredient. The only, I know that's kind of a non-answer, but I do have an answer, I promise. The only secret ingredient is how badly you want it. That's it.
Alright, thank you, Vincent and Rachel. So moving on, so both of you achieved great success in your fields outside of the traditional academic paths that you might associate with Chinese Americans. And so could you share some of your experiences and unique challenges you might have faced while exploring and excelling in these non-academic fields?
Sure. So when I was 9 years old, my mom and I moved away from home. If you attended the keynote speech earlier, you heard a little bit about this. My mom and I moved away from home in order to train hundreds of miles away with a world-class skating coach. And this was a sort of move that no Chinese American family from the Bay Area in figure skating had really done before. So we didn't have a model to follow. We couldn't just look to some XYZ person who had done it before and say like, oh, they did this, they went to this school, they used this resource, they bought their groceries here, they lived in this apartment. Like, we didn't have any of that information. So we just kind of had to blaze our own trail as we went. And the lesson there is thinking outside the box, not being afraid to think outside the box. Excuse me. And not being afraid to do something, take a leap that people think is crazy. You never know until you try it, as cliche as it sounds.
I love that answer, Vincent, because it also ties in the importance of just receiving support from your loved ones. I was equally supported and inspired by my own mom. She is one who, she kind of pursues excellence in literally anything she does. Not just academics, but like we, as a community, we excel in the athletics that we participate in, our musical and artistic abilities, our natural interpersonal skills. Like that's why so many of us have been able to succeed in this country. It's because as a community, we like support each other, and those relationships also define your success. So at least personally, I was instilled in a belief that like there's more than just one way to succeed and make your people proud. So it came pretty naturally to just pursue what you were interested in and excel in a path that you'll actually want to follow.
I admire you both very much. I think both of you forged like paths in things that people hadn't really pursued before. As the first one of color for major engineering, and also I kind of talked about a lot of things to train for your student. So as Chinese Americans, however, how do you feel your cultural upbringing influenced your experiences and interactions in the academic settings? So did you encounter like stereotypes and biases, and like how did you navigate and overcome them?
When thinking about how my background, my cultural background, my racial ethnic identity influenced things outside of academics, the first thing that I would say is that excellence is part of our culture, and it's in particular academic excellence. But in my family, the mindset was like, no matter what you're doing, you have to make it worthwhile. You have to make the time, the resources committed worthwhile. And so when I chose to pursue skating, it was not only that I love skating, but excellence was the only option. And that. I think there's a debate to be had around that. Like, is that a toxic mindset? Is that unrealistic to place that sort of pressure on children? And I think we're going to talk about pressure in a little bit. But that sort of answers the question about how my cultural background shaped my forays into skating and extracurriculars. So it's like if I'm going to commit time to something, then I want to actually derive value out of it. I don't want to do it just for fun, just because. I want to do it because it brings meaning to me, it brings fulfillment to me, there's a purpose in doing it. And so I encourage everyone to look for purpose in everything they do.
Yeah, I will definitely echo Vincent's sentiment on just the community's values on excellence in whatever we do. That is something that will and continue to drive me as I go forward. But I would definitely say I've faced just like ignorant comments in anything. I at least grew up in a fairly accepting bubble where like harsh racism did not severely impact me, but there are the casual kind of misname me for somebody else who is also Chinese American. Or I had a really random encounter where somebody just randomly started speaking Mandarin to me. This was a white man who just made an accidental correct assumption that I understand what he was saying, but it was an assumption nonetheless. And I think a lot of these instances, as just leaders for our generations, for our culture, it's better to choose to address that with an open heart and be like, thank you so much for trying. Or just try to educate people as you go along, rather than face it with like anger and put up other walls, because that's not going to help us take steps forward.
Yeah, so what you just said there reminded me of some experiences I've had where, I guess this is not just some experience, this is actually very prevalent in my experience with the media in skating. Many of you probably know who Nathan Chen is, Olympic champion, Chinese American as well, 1.5 years older than me. But as we both kind of made our way into the spotlight, we were constantly compared, and the media was always trying to create this narrative of Vincent versus Nathan because they thought we were so similar. You know, people outside of our community think of our community as a monolith, and unfortunately that's just how communities tend to think of other communities. And I think we can all do better in you know, trying to combat that mindset, that tendency to make monolithic assumptions about a different community.
Thank you for your comments, guys. I agree. I think a lot of this sort of like casual racism almost is based in ignorance. It's not intentionally like malice or anything, but it hurts nonetheless. And like we should try our best to educate others and like try to correct these wrongs. But anyway, Vincent, you mentioned handling pressure, and it's definitely a common theme for both of you. So like both of you have had a lot of expectations and demands placed on you. And like both personally, from yourself, I'm sure, and from external sources, family, friends, community, and while pursuing excellence in your field. So how do you feel like you manage that sort of pressure?
Pressure almost became normalized for me. I sort of got used to waking up every day and feeling that weight on my shoulders to have to, you know, go into the rink and perform at my very best. And you know, I think some of that was good. You know, it drove me to be better. It drove me. It was and it wasn't fueled by negativity either. It was fueled by my own passion and my own desire. But there's also a tough side to it where it's like, you know, when you're actually performing out there, you don't want to put unrealistic pressures on yourself and feel the need to like live up to a certain preset image, because then you know, the way your body moves, the way your mind works starts getting super manual, and you don't want to be manual when you're out there in the arena. You want to be automatic. You want it to be, you know, you want to be present. You want to be your muscle memories flowing, and you want to be in the moment. So actually this segues into something I wanted to talk about, which is a mental technique for handling pressure, which is reframing a situation. So when I'm out there competing, or you know, if I'm under some sort of difficult, extenuating circumstance, I will always try and reframe it as something more positive. So, you know, prime example is, you know, often on training days, I'm sore, I'm tired, I don't want to, you know, I just want to go home, and I don't want to do this last session. I don't want to train anymore, but I have to. And so what do I tell myself? Instead of telling myself, oh God, this is such a drag, this is, you know, I'm gonna do so terribly, I tell myself, this is an opportunity for me to see how well I can do when I feel like this, so that when I go to compete and I'm jet lagged, I'm stressed, maybe I'm having some equipment issues, or maybe something's hurting, but I still have to compete anyway. Well, I know that, you know, on X day when I'm in that practice, I was able to do it feeling tired and frustrated and, you know, going through whatever. And so using negative events, or, you know, when you feel pressure, using that as an opportunity to test yourself, and you know, reframing it as something more positive is a technique that I find highly effective.
I will say I've never had to really balance the pressures of a nation's Olympic expectations on my shoulders in my role. But I think Vincent's answer is great and is very applicable to all of us. As the Michigan Marching Band's drum major, there's a very long audition process that can be as long as one semester or like 3 entire years leading up to it. And I started my freshman year, so the audition process and the buildup of that pressure was over a very long period of time. And I kind of just discovered that pressure can lead you down 2 paths. One is just the fear of failure, and that's the negative one that we want to avoid, because then you start, it becomes counterproductive to your work, because you're not working for the right reasons. You're just afraid of not succeeding. Whereas pressure, we should try to lead us towards like ambition and the desire to just make ourselves feel proud. Whether you're putting yourself under this pressure because you want something, because you feel your family wants something, your community is expecting something, why the pressure? When you find that why, that is motivation enough to continue to put in all of those hard hours, to wake up on a day where your body physically aches, and to just keep going.
All right, thank you guys. So, sort of wrapping up the more serious part of this, so that we can leave a little bit of room for Q&A at the end. I'm sure a lot of you have a lot of questions you want to ask. So as sort of like the first, or like one of like making your own firsts in like a new field, you're sort of representing more than yourself, right? Like you know that you're standing as a symbol for like the Chinese American community, which is sometimes problematic, like you said, because of that monolithic view. But it's sort of true nonetheless. And so how have you approached the weight of this responsibility? And not to be so much the last question, what impact do you hope to make as the role models for the future generation?
The impact that I would like to make as the first something. I will put out the disclaimer that I served as the first woman of color drum major, but I am also very openly LGBTQ+, and so that largely defined how I wanted to be viewed as a leader. But most significantly, it just influenced my everyday interactions with not like constituents, but with the students that I worked with. I shook hands with a lot of donors, alumni, and my goal was just to really never be ashamed about my identity, never in a way that I had to conform myself to fit their expectations, but I also just wanted to meet them halfway. So if you feel that you will be met with a hostile environment, you don't want to also be hostile yourself. So as leaders, you just have to be willing to find that line where you can be vocal and advocate for your own identities, your values, your people, but you can also hear the other side so that you can then have a fair discussion and hopefully pave the path for future generations and teach them to do the same.
The way in which I manage the expectations and pressure that come with maybe being a role model or representing a group of people is that I compartmentalize. And so what I mean by that is when I have to go out there and compete, on behalf of the United States of America or on behalf of whatever, I have a job to do, and that job involves skating and what skating entails. My job is not to portray the image of my entire race, or my job is not to portray the entirety of the United States of America. All I have to focus on is my movements, my technique, my program, whatever skating itself involves. And then I can worry about the implications of whatever representation later. But I think the takeaway is you want to identify action items that you can control. You want to identify variables that you can control and that you can't control, and only worry about what you are in control of. For example, so skating is a sport where another person's performance doesn't directly impact yours, versus a sport like, for example, tennis, where another person's return obviously impacts whatever action you're going to take next. But in skating, when the person before you is done, then you take the ice, then you do your program, and it doesn't matter what the person before you, how the person before you skated, and how the person after you skated. So when you start worrying about, like if I start worrying about like, oh my god, Yuzuru Hanyu did this, or Nathan Chen did that, or Shoma Uno did that, like that's disruptive to my own game, my own mentality. So that's what I mean by compartmentalizing and only worrying about what I can control. In terms of what I want to pass down to the future generation or how I hope to inspire them, I would just say that there are a lot of young Asian Americans right now that that maybe were inspired by seeing myself or seeing Nathan compete, and maybe they have their own big dreams that they want to they want to make the Olympics one day, or they want to land a quad one day or whatever, and right now they probably feel like they're a long ways away from that dream, from that dream being realized. But here is living proof that it's possible, because I was in their shoes, I was in your shoes. If there's any young figure skaters out there right now, I was in your shoes a decade or more ago, and I was struggling with very easy elements, and I was struggling with my future in skating, and unsure if I would ever make it. But I stayed the course, and through a lot of things which we've discussed, I made it happen. So I hope that by example I can inspire the next generation to rise up and achieve greater things.
Just to add on to that, Vincent, I'm sure when you were like 7 years old, preteen, whatever, you never really you didn't put that pressure on yourself because you had the dream of being the first. Like that small benchmark didn't define your hard work and who you were. But this goes to show that by following your passion and by simply choosing to excel in what you want to excel at, you inherently become a leader in your field. And so strong leaders are always passionate about what they do. They don't just lead for the sake of having the title, if that makes sense.
Nice, yeah. Okay, so I think we all heard a lot about all your accomplishments, so I want to knock you guys down a notch. And I want you to tell us a little bit about one time that you failed, or that was just a really embarrassing moment for you. So, whichever one of you wants to put yourself on the spot. I know, but
Okay. I will be honest, I split my pants during a performance once. If any of you are familiar with the Michigan Marching Band, maybe not, that's okay. The drum major wears like a bright white uniform. And I am not of average build, so it was hard to get the uniform to fit me. I had to take it in for multiple alterations, and this year they had done a revamp, so the uniform was a little extra stretchy too, which was nice. But I was stretching before a performance, and this was for the president of our university too. This was at his inauguration. I was stretching before it, and I felt the seams just give a little. Oh, that's not good. And sure enough, they ripped in the middle of the performance. I'm hoping that nobody saw, but now everybody in this room knows. So,
Well, I will say your wardrobe is also an important part of figure skating. Fortunately, I haven't had major wardrobe malfunctions in competition, but I know some people who have, and unfortunately, sensationalist news outlets always want to make a big deal out of it. So, but I think the failure or embarrassing moment I would talk about. I guess I have to talk about the times that you mess up on the big stage, right? People look at highly successful athletes and they often think like they're so good at what they do, like they just they probably never mess up or can't be beaten, or when they do mess up, it's like so rare. That's absolutely not true. Like the road to success is littered with potholes and obstacles and major shortcomings, major failures along the way, and I've fallen and messed up more times in competition than I can count. And obviously each time I feel embarrassed, I feel inadequate, I feel terrible, and I feel like the world is ending. Because like I said earlier, I'm a perfectionist, and when things aren't perfect, I get really in my head about it. And what I had to learn to do was, again, compartmentalize. So in a program, in a skating program, you have a preset order of the elements that you're doing. And you know, when you're starting your program in a competition, you kind of want to think about it less as an entire thing, because that becomes overwhelming. You want to think about it more like a series of elements. And if the first element goes wrong, you know, if you make an embarrassing mistake, you put it behind you and you focus on doing the rest of the stuff as well as you can, because that's what you can control. You can't change what happened already. You can only control what's going to happen. So this ties into what I said earlier about identifying what you can and can't control.
I will clarify, that wasn't meant to like embarrass you or anything. I just wanted everyone to know that even people that you admire have they make mistakes and they have to learn to bounce back, and that's a lot of what makes someone admirable and accomplish things. So, all right, the next question is extremely serious. How many kindergartners do you think you can take on in a fight? Like
hypothetically speaking.
Like hypothetically, this is of course a hypothetical situation. How many kindergartners do you think like you could actually win against in a fight? Like I'm not saying like subdue, like I'm saying like you have to subdue all of them kind of situation. You know what I mean? You wanna think about it?
Okay. I'm gonna say something that's gonna offend somebody here. Any kindergartners in the crowd? I'm sorry in advance. I mean, I think when I was in kindergarten, I weighed what, like 50, 60 pounds? Is that pushing it? Is that too much? I don't know. But okay, so here's the thing about kindergartners though. Kindergartners are crazy. They don't hold back. Like they use their full strength when they come at you. Yeah, they don't. Because like if you're like, I don't know, if you're like wrestling or like whatever with an adult, they're not actually serious about it, obviously, usually, right? When you say like, you know, take on in a fight. Yeah, honestly. But kids don't care. They will like kick you and bite you and like they'll like set their dog on you. Like they just do not care. So that's gonna have to tone down my answer a little bit. But the answer is probably going to be 5 or less.
5?
Yes, because they don't care. Especially like I don't know, like if they don't cut their nails and they just like start scratching, or they go for the eye poke, or like the Donnie Yen like
if they bring you down to the ground, it's over.
Yeah.
Here's my thing. If it's any more than 2 kindergartners, that's already 1, 2 sitting on your feet. They've immobilized you. A third one, they're bringing you down to the ground. Well, okay. I could take more than 5 kindergartners in a foot race. But in like an enclosed room, probably just 2 or 3. Because they would work smart. And I'm fragile. I don't want to fight kindergartners.
That's pretty valid. However, I do feel we should test that theory with Vincent, because I think that's a little overconfident of you. You know, like
I mean,
5.
I thought, yeah.
I think just 1 on each like limb and you'd be done. Like, you know. But you know, that's just me.
So glad we brought out all these kindergartners today.
Anyone wants to volunteer? Let me know. We can do this maybe at the talent show or something.
We've got some volunteers.
I know. I'm sure they're very excited about this. Okay. So because you compete in the Olympics, I felt we had to include like some sort of question about the Olympics. So, which Olympic or which sport or which sort of thing that people do you think should be an Olympic sport but isn't?
I will start this one off. Has anyone here ever heard of combat juggling? It's an excellent sport. So you know the concept of regular juggling. Throw multiple things up in the air, keep them in the air. The concept is you have multiple jugglers out in an arena, and while they're juggling, their goal is to knock the other jugglers' items out of the air and interrupt their flow. And in doing so, you also have to maintain your own juggling as you go, and I think that would be an excellent sport.
I want to switch it up. I want to switch it up and talk about a sport that actually is or was in the Olympics but shouldn't be. Did you guys know that in 1900 poodle clipping was an Olympic sport? Like giving a poodle a haircut. was an Olympic sport in 1900 in Paris. I don't know, French people know something.
Was it like standard sized noodles?
I feel like you just like vastly underestimate the effort it takes to subdue a small child or animal. Like I feel like if you're trying to pin down a poodle and give it a haircut and it doesn't want to.
Okay, those are some crazy implications. You don't want to get killed for animal abuse here.
Have you ever seen like a demonstration for things?
No.
No? Okay.
No.
Just curious. Alright.
I love the concept because you could rate it on speed and style. So it
Like
brings
how
in
nice is the
artistic.
haircut? Right. Right, like figure skating, artistic component. What other Olympic sport really?
But if we start applying those objective judgments or goalposts to everything, like then that's a slippery slope. Like what's next? Like setting up tables in a room, or like you could apply like the title fastest to anything.
Has anyone here been harshly criticized for the shape of their dumplings that they fold?
Oh,
Dumpling folding.
Dumpling folding.
That's cool. For the culture.
Yeah.
For the culture. Dumpling.
The next time Beijing hosts an Olympics, we'll add dumpling folding.
Oh my god, wait, have you ever tried wrapping the tongues? Like,
I'm terrible.
that is difficult. It falls apart. Yes,
Yes.
I know. And then like your mom or your grandma.
It's because you grew up in the
It's
US.
because you grew up here. It's because of that phone. You're on your phone all the time, so that's why you can't fold tongues.
It's because you don't floss.
It's always the phone, guys. I'm just telling you right now, it's always because of the phone. Okay, so like on that note, what's something that your Chinese American family did that you thought was totally normal? Until you saw like talk with other kids and you're like, oh, your family doesn't do that. Sorry, I just pretend I never said it.
Well,
Is that because you love parents?
Maybe.
I will say, my mom is from Tsinghua, but my dad is from Beijing. So you can imagine, it's the Harvard-Yale competition in basketball all the time. But I know. Average is embarrassing for them.
Well, then which side do you prefer?
You're in a room full of
Tsinghua all the way. The purple is my favorite color. I will say, I think it's normal to some degree for families to hoard like plastic bags and some takeout containers, the nice ones. But my mom will reuse like everything. We have baby food jars from when my sister and I were babies, still in our pantry.
There's that one compartment under the sink where all the plastic bags are kept.
I think, okay, so Rachel and I actually talked about this earlier, but apparently both of our parents we've like, our families have independently like somehow gone on a ski trip. Like, and brought a full like meal to the resort to cook because they had bad food options there. And it was like, like amusement park food sort of, and we were like, that's not it, right?
This came up because my mom flew to Colorado from Indiana with an entire carton of eggs, like wrapped up in her suitcase. So we opened her suitcase and thought it would be like clothes, scarves. It was eggs, groceries, cabbage. Like we had a full dumpling night while we were
No, because we had like a hot pot, like full hot, like the pot, the meat, the seasoning, like the Hai Di Lao seasoning, and like just everything, the silverware knives, everything, right? At the ski resort. And it was just, we just set it up because they were like terrible food options, we couldn't drive anywhere, right? And it was like, I just think it's weird that this has happened like to two people that just, on completely separate occasions.
economical. It's
Like complete coincidence, but I don't know if your family's ever done anything like that, but
It's cultural tradition. I can't say I have. Maybe I'm not cultural.
Okay, and on that note, like I feel like something that is not like talked about enough is like, well, I guess maybe it is talked about, but like how to make food. Like, listen, I'm in college, right? So I'm learning how to make food, and it's like every time you learn a recipe, it's always like just add a little bit of this. Like it's just a bit. It's just a little bit, right? But like there's no like actual measurements for anything. You're just like, yeah, like you need to add less of this, but more of this, and this is going first because it cooks like longer. It's I don't know, but it's like never written down, never measured out, and it's like I don't know. It's weird. I thought that was like every family, you know.
Our most like cherished family recipes, 饺子 included, but like 红烧肉, like that's a pretty good staple. I have no idea how to make aside from when I watch my mom make it. And if I don't learn, that traditional recipe will die with the generation because it's not written down. And even if you read the directions, right? Like, what do you mean just add soy sauce? How much do I add? When do I add it? What do I add it to? It's not written. You just have to know. You just have to observe.
Follow your heart.
Oh, okay.
Follow your heart. When your heart tells you to put in the soy sauce, you put in the soy sauce.
There is no secret ingredient.
Yeah. You know, my family had a similar experience. It's, you know, I was, you know, trying to learn to cook for my mom and dad, and they always told me, oh yeah, there's no set amount. You just kind of have to feel it out. But I know that like a lot of the Western families I've seen have very set recipes. So like, oh, half a teaspoon of this, a quarter tablespoon
The
of that.
grandma's like recipe box passed
Yeah,
down to 5
exactly.
generations.
Exactly. So, but we keep it natural. We keep it real.
So I think you know there's something to be admired with like you know the way we were raised. It might be different than like what you might have known from your classmates growing up and everything. But I wanted to bring it up because I thought you know it's good for everyone to know like it's a different way of growing up, but it's still a very valid way of growing up. And honestly, it comes with its own perks, right? Like can you think of like a genius, like kind of stingy, but also like life hack thing that your parents do that you know other parents like that don't seem to do, but you're like, why would you not do that? You know? Let's see. I think we were talking about this earlier about like cooking like noodle dishes, and then you remember that?
Yeah. So one thing that my parents do that could be considered stingy, but also could be considered genius, is after we cook 面食, like noodles or wontons or 饺子, we will always use the leftover water in the pot to wash dishes after. to save water, right? And apparently, you know, my mom always says that water, like the water that has like flour in it, is like too old. So not only are you saving water, you're also saving dish detergent. Dish soap. So it's doubly effective.
Brilliant.
See, I love these moments because usually, like, Michigan was a predominantly white institution. Like, I have a lot of friends who don't look like me, and so I come here and I'm like, oh, I'm not actually that alone because other people will like water their plants with the noodle water. I'm not crazy. No, okay. So like whenever we would blanch vegetables, like 煮点菜花, like 菠菜, the water left over is like green, right? We would water the plants with it because my mom says there are leftover nutrients, so it's like fertilizer for the plants. It's extra good.
I will say, my mom herself doesn't really have a green thumb, but she does the same thing, right? And sometimes it makes sense, right? Like what you just said. But then sometimes I'm like, Mom, you're pouring straight coffee into the flower pot, and then it dies, right? And she's like, oh no, I just forgot about it. I'm like, no, you just poured coffee in it, that's why. Or like something that's like, just like, Mom, that has like, that's like 50% bleach. We're cleaning like, you know, the floor with it. Like you can't just put that in your flower. She's like, no, it's fine. And then it just, you know.
An extra hack too, like anytime you're done with sauce bottles, no matter how much you like shake it down, store it vertically, there's always that little bit left over. So especially with the jars of lakanma that we all have, I'm sure. My mom will like shake some water in it to get the oils out and then dump it into the stir fry again. Extra flavor, no waste, it's perfect.
I think lakanma is a staple. Like how Asian is your family if you don't have lakanma? No.
I just moved to the DC area and haven't found like my Asian grocery store yet.
I had to ask my parents to bring us a jar of longan.
Oh, good. You're still Asian now. It's okay. It's okay. You still got
It was really scary for a minute.
Still got We're about to excommunicate you. Okay. So I think maybe like one more question about this, and then like if you have a couple quick Q&As, we can do that. So I don't know if your parents ever did this as a kid, but they were like pseudoscientific beliefs that they kind of instilled in you, like, oh, if your hair's wet, you can't go outside, right? Like because you're gonna get sick because it's cold, even if it's like 50 degrees, right? And things like that. And I feel like I just kind of believe them because it kind of made sense, right? Like it's called a cold, right? So maybe it has to do with the cold, and things like that. Like do you feel like your family ever did that?
I have a specific example. Yeah, so one sort of pseudoscientific thing that that I heard growing up was you can't sleep with a fan blowing on you because it's going to deform your face. And so I was like lying there in a puddle of sweat every summer night, like just dying. Like I don't want a deformed face, but I also want to like I want to be able to sleep. I mean, I don't. So at some point, I just chalked that up to be like some fairy tale or whatever. And I started ignoring it. So I turned the fan. I would always turn the fan on, and then.
Does your mom know?
And then my mom would come in and check on me during the night and turn the fan off. And I would pretend to be asleep, but I was actually awake. So then I would, like after she left, I would tiptoe back and turn the fan on again. And she would come in again like an hour later and turn it off again. I don't know, I hope I don't have, do I have a deformed face? I hope not.
You look beautiful, Vincent. We're all thinking it. It's okay. I'll say, does anyone's parents or grandparents follow like Zhong strictly religiously? Yeah. So there's very specific rules on when, how you can eat things, where, in what combination. So Selena and I were talking about this. There's a rule of like combining acids and bases when you eat. So for example, you really should not eat oranges and milk at the same time because acid-base reaction, it's going to precipitate in your stomach and give you a stomachache. I don't think I've actually done it, but mostly because oranges and milk is just a weird combo. Just weird rules on how you can eat things and with what.
I feel like I believed it up and I was like, yes, that makes sense. I learned this in chemistry. And then I was like, wait, my stomach is full of acid. Like in the first place, does that mean I can never drink anything that's above like 7? All right, so I'm gonna open up the floor for questions now. It's like, does anyone have any more questions? They can be totally like non-serious as well, or they can be, like what we were talking about in the first half of this session. So, does anyone have any? Okay, all right, I'm gonna pass this mic back since I can't really here. Actually, yes, I can.
Thank you. Hi. Okay, so actually the first thing I want to say is I want to compliment you because like the atmosphere you created was really nice. Okay, and actually if I had a question, it would be, are you okay? Because like I guess both of you guys, sorry, this is kind of like deep, experience like external pressures from like maybe the media or also like discrimination against like not only race but also sexuality. So like, how do you guys manage your mental health? Yes.
Sorry. There's only one mic. I'm just running back and forth.
Oh, we can just
yell.
Well, thank you so much for asking that question. I don't think that's talked about nearly enough in most communities, let's be real. One thing I really just fell back on is like my community. If that frustration happens, I'll talk to my friends, my girlfriend, my parents, my sister, and they all know exactly what I'm going through. They often know how I'm feeling before I know how I'm feeling. And just talk it out, be able to approach the situation reasonably again. And if there's any specific instance that is like repetitive, causing continuous stress, just take a break from it if possible. I feel like we've all taken a break from social media at times when that has been overbearing, too many negative headlines, and that's done great things for mental health, so just take a break when you can.
I think mental health is such a difficult issue to tackle because it's intangible, it's multifaceted, it's complex, it's not fully understood, and you can't see it. But
the good news is that there are very tangible steps that we can take to preserve, protect, and improve our mental health. And one of those things is physical exercise. Whenever I start feeling like I'm getting sort of a down in the dumps period, I know that I just need to go outside and get a good run, or like I love bouldering, so a good bouldering session always puts me in a much better mood, and I find myself more motivated for proper activities the next day, whether that's studying or applying myself to something that would otherwise be be tedious or difficult. So physical exercise is one thing, and another thing is identifying sources of that stress or whatever's antagonizing your mental health, identifying the source, and then finding an appropriate outlet. And appropriate is important because there are a lot of bad ways, a lot of bad outlets. But like one of my outlets for mental health, for preserving my mental health and finding some way to talk about and express things that I might otherwise be uncomfortable getting out of my system is through writing. So I write poetry. I'm gonna do a little shameless plug here. I have a writing account, or a writing/poetry account on Instagram. It's tears __in __rain. So tears in rain with 2 underscores between each word, and that's a Blade Runner reference. So any Blade Runner fans here, cheers. But when I'm writing, I feel so in touch with myself, with my emotions, with my mental state, and with my desires, with my stressors, whatever. I just feel so in tune, so harmonious when I'm writing. And when I get a finished product out there, I feel like I've successfully captured myself and put it into like an acceptable product, a deliverable, if you will. And for me, that's a great feeling. It's a great outlet. And I encourage all of you to find an outlet like that, and don't be embarrassed to share. And of course, finding a community like Rachel talked about. That's really important.
All right, thank you everyone. So I think we're actually out of time. We're a little over time. So we have events starting. I think the talent show is from 5 to 6, so I think we need to head there now. But thank you so much for making this a fun panel, guys. You're a great audience.